This is TWiT.
So we got a few iPads here. I notice all three of these come with or are equipped with the new Folio Keyboard case.
There is also a
smart
Folio that just has, or a Folio case.
Yeah.
Still front and back because all the magnets, there's like 102 magnets in the iPad Pro, and a lot of them are right on the back. So this gets held in place on the back.
And I noticed this has 3 pogo pins on this one.
Yeah, that's the
for
smart
the keyboard
connector, and that it gives power to the keyboard and sends the keyboard data back.
So unlike the old iPad with the pogo pins on the bottom, these are on the side.
Those are on the back, and what they want. And I imagine that if there are other accessories for the iPad Pro to come out, they will all probably do the same thing, which is mount on the back using magnets.
So yeah, Logitech says they're doing a keyboard case. I know there's quite a few. Bridge is going to do one.
Bridge is going to do one. Yeah.
So we'll see keyboard cases for the iPad Pro. Although I have to say, I like the Apple one. The only negative is it's $200.
Yeah, it's $200 for the 12.9. It's I think $180 for the 11-inch, but it's very expensive. The Bridge keyboard, which is my favorite for the old model, was $150. Yeah. So, and that's got physical keys.
Right.
These
although are chiclets.
They're really good. I mean, for a fabric keyboard, it's quite good. And this is much better than the old one because it's got the 2 viewing angles, and because all the force is being put. It's not a kickstand case. All the force is being put on this single rigid surface, so you can use it in your lap.
I like that. And I have to say, let me just close this. This is a fairly elegant way to carry it around. Of course, this is the new pencil. We're doing the accessories first because we're going to get to the iPad.
Sure.
This is the new pencil, which magnetically adheres to the top, and when it's doing that, it's charging, which is great.
Yeah, because it's not only a magnet attachment, it's an inductive charger, and it will pair automatically.
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
I was able to shake it off.
If you get it mounted right, it's harder to shake it off, but it's still very easy to just kind of brush it off.
That's the real problem. You put it in your briefcase, it's going to brush off.
It'll pop off. But in sort of just general use around the house, it's more likely that you're going to keep it with you than the old one. Big thing, you mentioned it. The old keyboard case had like a ledge because it had multiple things that folded, and this one's really much nicer because it's just the 2 planes. So when you close it up, it's flat.
Yes.
The old one, it wasn't flat. It was like it was a low part and then a high part.
Right.
And this is so they really they improved both of these accessories. The pencil, it solves every problem with the pencil. It had the little weird wiggly tip, and you had to like stick it in the lightning port to charge it. Now it charges inductively. It's got a magnet so you can clip it to it. There was no management of the pencil before.
And now you can tap it.
It now has gesture support. It's a double tap to switch to a different
Now you tell me something very interesting. I just assumed, as I'm sure everybody did, that the double tap is sensing the jiggle with an accelerometer. That's not the case.
No, according to Apple, that is a touch-sensitive surface right at the front of the pencil.
So gestures.
And some people have looked and suggested that there was gesture support in the OS in a beta at some point. So it's possible that they won't ever do anything with that, but it is possible that down the road they might open that up so that if you did like a slide or something like that, you could do something different than the double tap. But for now, it's just a double tap, and there's a default set where there's a system setting, so you can say, I want to toggle between whatever tool I'm using in the eraser or whatever tool I'm using in the previous tool, or I can double tap to bring up a color picker, and that's the default. But if you're an app developer who wants to build your own response to that gesture, you can do that. So you can either use the default, or if your the Photoshop demo showed.
I love that she was dragging when she tapped, switched back and forth between drawing and dragging.
Yeah, and you can bring up a menu or do whatever else you want. But there are some behaviors that are built in by default.
All right,
so it's way better than it used to be.
Let's detach the accessories and talk about the device. This is different design than the old iPads. These are squared off.
You got the little guy here too.
Not the skinny thing. Let's actually show those two together. You have the 11-inch, and that's the
12.9 and the 11. Yeah.
So what they did with the 10.5 is they basically expanded the screen to 11 on the same size device, roughly.
Yeah, they did a really smart thing, which is they think people really like this standard size, and so they just kept it the same and expanded the screen. So this is a
very little bezel.
And it's a different aspect ratio as a result. It's not 4:3, it's a little bit wider. And that means that all apps have to be updated to support the new aspect ratio and all of that, otherwise they're letterboxed. But with the 12.9, they went the other way, which was to keep the screen the same size and shrink the device.
And actually, this to me is the sweet spot. I really like
I think you're right. I was tempted. The 12.9 has always been kind of big and kind of heavy, but you cut a bunch of size off of it, and that weight is... The weird thing about the 12.9 was always just the weight was distributed so widely that it was kind of ungainly. And it's a little more dense now, but it's smaller, and I think this is the sweet spot. This feels a little too small to me now.
No notch.
No notch.
We go almost all the way to the edges. Enough. You still have to hold it.
So the true depth sensor is in there. That's the thing that's behind the notch in the iPhone 10.
It's here though this time.
But now these bezels are larger, but they're the same size all the way around.
Right.
No home button anymore, and the true depth camera, and it does Face ID, all 4 orientations.
So when you first set it up, you have to do it in portrait mode to set it up, just like you would on a phone. But once you set it up, you can rotate it in any direction and it will recognize you. This is something Apple said it couldn't do on the iPhone 10. They've obviously figured that out.
And they said the hardware is the same, but what they've done is they've had to retrain their machine learning to deal with the different angles. It's not just the orientations, but all the angles, because you can be kind of like out like this.
Diagonal.
Like if you're doing this, it's shooting from below and it's looking up your nose, and it needs to measure that nose properly.
The other thing it does, which I think is really nice, because you could very easily have your finger over the camera, it will, first of all, you don't know where the camera is. It's kind of invisible. It'll point to the camera and it'll say, it's blocked right now.
Yeah.
Move it over. Move it over.
Yeah. It actually draws a little arrow.
It's pretty cute.
And says you can't.
I don't even know if I'm upright or not. Oh, there we go. All right. So, okay. So camera. See, it says camera covered.
There it is.
Yeah, my camera's covered because I got my finger there. Oh, but it unlocked. I have to say, the A12X Bionic that's in here, the processor in here, which is even faster than on the iPhone XS, right?
Yes.
Is fast.
Yeah, it's an 8-core processor. There are 4 performance cores and 4 low-power cores, but they can use all 8 if it needs to power up.
7 GPU cores.
Yeah.
And a machine learning core.
And
Holy
what
cow.
is it? I think that's like 8 machine learning cores too. Yeah.
It's crazy. This thing is way overpowered because you're still running iOS.
Yeah, I mean there are. Photoshop's coming next year. There are other apps. I do podcast editing on it in Ferrite.
How is it doing that?
And it's great.
Does it feel faster?
And it's faster now. It is measurably faster now for some of those things like bouncing or encoding MP3s or things like that. But this is one of the challenges we were talking before the show. The knock on the iPad is not the hardware; it's the software. I keep saying
the hardware
is willing, but the software is weak.
That's what Nilay Patel said as well. But this feels like the future of computing, in no doubt. I mean, this is super fast, super slick, but you're stuck with something basically feels to me like an operating system that's based on the iPhone.
Yeah, that's right. The original conception was the iPhone, and it's been adapted. And for years, up until about three years ago, Apple really didn't do anything in terms of investing in the iPad's features. And they've turned the corner there, but still. Mark Gurman at Bloomberg had a report that there were a bunch of iPad features that were supposed to be in iOS 12 that got kicked out until iOS 13 next year. It's hard, when you think about how long it takes for Apple to design a piece of hardware, it is hard not to look at this and imagine that maybe it was built with more features in mind than the operating system has. And there's a whole list of things that, a new way, the app launcher feels old, the Files app won't access network shares or external devices that you plug in.
I could plug a hard drive. I mean, I love it that it has USB-C now.
Right? It's a real
But plug
connector.
a hard drive in and it'll think it's a camera.
Yeah, that's right. It'll do is import pictures and videos.
You can do your Bob Ross, your best Bob Ross.
Is that a happy little tree?
That's a happy little tree.
Very nice.
I love it. It's actually a little easier on the happy little trees to do it with the finger.
Sure.
Yeah.
Finger painting is all. So, it may be that Apple's iOS strategy is just lagging a little bit behind the hardware here, but you're right. It is really frustrating to have something with this kind of power and not be able to take advantage of all that power.
Actually, I didn't.
You feeling good now?
Sean drew this, and I'm ruining Sean's painting.
There's undo.
Yeah. You know what's really weird? Every time I tap one of this is Procreate. Like I'm going to show this, see Rainbow Feather, I want to look at it, tap it, it erases it. the hell happened there?
I don't know.
I can't see any of the demos anymore.
Why did you ruin it?
I ruined it. Ruined it. So that's probably because not all the apps are yet hip to be the new iPad.
Apps are
right?
still being updated to support the new screen size. There are safe areas at the top and the bottom because there's no home button now.
Yeah.
The aspect ratio on the 11-inch is completely different. So there's work to be done, and then there's a lot of work to be done on Apple's part. We talk about Photoshop coming out next year on the iPad, and that'll be great. But iOS needs to be better. iOS needs. There's no doubt. I'm not one of those people who says you can't do real work on the iPad. I don't travel with a laptop anymore. Yeah. I only travel with an iPad. But you do run into a lot of barriers because iOS has not come along as fast as it should have on the iPad.
Even with it, I mean, the new gestures are great. They're the iPhone gestures you're probably familiar with. You can pull up the dock. You can, let's say I want to do some photos in my, I can either have it hovering like this, and I'll pick a picture. I think I have a picture of, let's mail this to Jason. What do you say?
Yeah, great.
So,
I can't wait to see that.
I like this too. I could swipe this out of the way, and it stays there. Going to create a new thing, and then swipe it back in, paste it.
You got to touch and hold until it picks up.
Pick up. There we go. Whoa.
Oh, see? Oh, there you go.
Ah, there we go. Put it right in there, just like that. I think some of these things are really designed for productivity, and so sometimes I think, and I've read articles to the fact that, we're just old school. We expect computing to be a certain way. The kids are going to be very comfortable with this, but I feel like it's just a little too hard to edit text. It's just a little bit too hard to do some things.
Well,
Apple could make this better.
The truth is in the middle, right? The people who say you can't do work on an iPad are wrong, because of course I know lots of people who do work on the iPad every day.
Right.
Then again, the people who say, like Steven Sinofsky, who used to be at Microsoft, said, opening files from a flash drive is old school, and the kids don't need to do that anymore. And I think, the problem is we don't always work in an environment with high-speed cloud storage available to us at all times.
Right.
Sometimes one of your coworkers who's using a PC still because the world hasn't changed yet hands you a thumb drive and says, here's my PowerPoint presentation. Open this on your iPad. And you can't do that right now. And that's just ridiculous. That should just be done. I know that, yes, in the future we won't have thumb drives and we'll have pervasive high-speed cloud storage everywhere, but this is reality. Sometimes I'm recording a podcast live somewhere and I end up with an audio file on an SD card and I literally cannot attach that. Even though there's an SD card reader, I can't see that file because iOS won't let me. And I have to have a whole weird, external Wi-Fi box to do it instead.
Get ready. I don't know who's going to use this. That's VGA, HDMI. Will this work with this?
Probably so. I have a USB-C to VGA
Type-C
adapter.
port? You've got video, you've got USB, not Thunderbolt, but you've got data.
Right, it's USB-C, so you can do data, you can do charging, you can do up to 5K video out, which is good if you're doing something like video editing, for example.
So you could run the Fuji 5K monitor on an HDMI cable?
If it's a USB-C monitor. Not if it's a Thunderbolt monitor.
That's
because it
really
won't work with Thunderbolt. So there are like 3 of them out there that are USB-C monitors at 5K. There aren't that many. But if you want to do mass storage, it will import your photos and your videos, but it will literally not show it to you, even though there's a file managing
I feel like
app.
that's not really the point of something like the iPad. It's really designed to be used by itself, kind of sui generis.
Well, if you're going to have $1,000 and up productivity device, is it too much to ask to say I'd like to be able to look at my network share and pull a file off? It's got a file manager app. This is the funny thing. It's like back when it didn't have a file manager app, I could see the argument. But now that the Files app exists, the door is open. You should probably walk through it. Similarly, there's a text editing cursor, and you can move it around on your screen with 2 fingers. Okay, well, you've got a cursor now. So you can't say cursors are impossible on iOS. Maybe you should allow pointing devices too.
Yeah.
At some point, some of this stuff probably needs to walk in the door. Yeah. But that said, I still use it when I travel, and it's great. I just wish that some aspects of it didn't force me to use really weird techniques to bypass the OS when it should just support it.
It's frustrating to me because you have such a amazing piece of hardware
Apple
here. Such a
Apple said
futuristic.
it is, if you survey the
Faster than 92% of all laptops.
sold in the last year, it's faster than 92% of them.
Yeah.
Apple is killing it on the hardware. This is an amazing piece of hardware. That A12 processor is spectacularly powerful. And then you get to one of those situations where you try to import a file and you can't do it.
Yeah.
And
Which is difficult.
yes, there are workarounds, but it's like, I want this to be the answer. And that's what frustrates people. And I think that's why people lash out and they say you can't do real work with it, which is not quite right. It's just, it's different work, but there are still, that doesn't make it that Apple doesn't need to do a lot of work here. Apple's got a lot of work to do on iOS on the iPad.
It's a lot of money to pay for a Netflix device.
Well, you shouldn't, right? I mean, this is actually, unlike some of other product lines that we're going to talk about here, at least the iPad, there's a reasonably priced iPad available. The $350 iPad is a pretty good iPad.
And that would be great for watching Netflix.
And for watching Netflix, you should not buy this to watch Netflix.
Yeah. But what should you buy this for?
Well,
that's the question.
I use this, like I said, I use this as my pro travel device, and I put photos in it and run Siri shortcuts, and I write, and you can edit photos on it, and you can edit video. I edit podcasts on it. There are lots of things that it can do because it's so powerful.
Right.
I wish it could do more, right? It would speak to more people. More people would be prospective buyers for this if it was a more capable piece of software running on it.
iPad Pro 11 inches, $799 with a 64 gigs worth of storage. You can add cellular for another $150, I think. You can add more storage. The iPad Pro 12.9 inch starts at $1,000 for 64 gigs of storage. The pencil's $129.
Keyboard's $200 for the one, and I think $180 for the other.
Smaller one. I have such mixed feelings about this. I'm in love with the hardware. I love it. It's incredible. And I want to do something with it, and I feel a little bit hobbled.
I think that's the
Apple's
source.
choices.
A lot of the frustration with the iPad is coming from that place, which I think people miss sometimes, which is when somebody complains about the iPad not being suitable for work. Yeah, those words are frustrating, but the fact is it's coming from a place of enthusiasm from it as a gadget, right? It is an amazing piece of hardware.
Yeah.
It's also expensive, but if you can justify it, it doesn't matter. How do you justify it? You have to justify it with what you do with it.
Right.
And that if you hit the wall and are like, I don't know, I can't do my job on this, of course you'd be frustrated.
Right. Well, truthfully, I think if money is an issue, you shouldn't buy anything from Apple. To be honest, there's an Apple premium on all of this stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's really designed for people who are willing to spend more for something that has a certain cachet to it.
I wouldn't say it's the cachet. I don't agree with that argument, but I do think
it's the power.
I think and it's nice. It's nicer. It's better.
Well, it's nicer. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not like I don't buy Apple gear because I want to be seen with an Apple logo.
Right.
I buy it because I don't want to use Windows.
Right.
That's a little bit different. But
I
yeah,
can understand
if you Apple has never been, what I always say is Apple's never been the low price leader. They're never going to be. It's not the game they're playing. And if that's what you want, you should get a Chromebook or you should get a cheap PC laptop or something like that.